Hey everyone, today we are going to be doing operations with multi-digit decimals. So we are going to be adding, subtracting, and multiplying. We're going to start with adding and then work in subtracting, and then the last thing we're going to do is multiplying, and then there is a short apply problem at the bottom. So example 1 says adding and subtracting, but we're going to add in example 1 and subtract in example 2. When we are adding multi-digit decimals, I'm going to add them vertically. So when I write 45.16 and I add 21.384, I'm going to line up the decimals. So you can see here that 1.16 and then 0.384, the decimals are lined up on top of each other. The 45.16 does not go all the way to the thousandths place, so I can add a placeholder 0. I'm actually going to add that in a different color. I can add a placeholder 0 to add. And then we're going to add straight down the columns. So 0 plus 4 is 4. 6 plus 8 is 14. So I'm going to have the 4 and carry the 1. And then 3 plus 1 is 4, plus 1 more is 5. The decimals are lined up because they line up through the answer as well. 5 plus 1 is 6, and 4 plus 2 is 6. So my answer is 66.544. In example B, so 356.725 plus, and I'm going to line the decimals up. So 142.4, and then I'm going to include those placeholder zeros. My decimals are lined up, and I'm going to add straight down. 5 plus 0 is 5, 2 plus 0 is 2, 7 plus 4 is 11, carry the 1. My decimal point, 2 plus 6 is 8, plus 1 is 9. 5 plus 4 is 9, and 3 plus 1 is 4. So the answer after I add here is 499.125. In part C, I've got 23.498 plus, and again I'm going to line up my decimals, 14.93. I need one placeholder 0 here at the end, and then I can add straight down. 8 plus 0 is 8. 9 plus 3 is 12, so I'm going to write the 2 and carry the 1. 9 plus 4 is 13, plus 1 is 14. I carry the 1. I'm going to bring my decimal down, so they should all be lined up. 4 plus 3 is 7, plus 1 more is 8, and then 2 plus 1 is 3. So the answer to my addition problem here is 38.428. For subtraction, we also have to line the decimal up. So I've got 32.94 minus 15.386. So my decimals are lined up again. And I'm going to have my placeholder 0. Now remember, when you're subtracting, we always want a bigger number minus a smaller number. So when I try to do 0 minus 6, that's not going to work. So I'm going to borrow from the 4 and turn the 0 into a 10. So 10 minus 6 is 4. I cannot do 3 minus 8, so I have to borrow again. 13 minus 8 is 5. 8 minus 3 is also 5. I bring the decimal straight down. I cannot do 2 minus 5, so I'm going to borrow one more time. 12 minus 5 is 7. And 2 minus 1 is 1. So the answer to my subtraction question here is 17.554. Part B is just slightly different. Part B, I've got a whole number, so 25, and my decimal is going to be at the end, minus 17.469. When I've got this whole number that doesn't have a decimal at the end, I can add a decimal, and in this case, I'm going to have 3 placeholder zeros. So as I'm subtracting and borrowing, I'm going to go across all 3 numbers. So I have to borrow from the 5 first. This becomes a 10. Well, I have to borrow from this. This becomes a 10. I have to borrow from this. And the last 0 becomes a 10. So 10 minus 9 is 1. 9 minus 6 is 3. 9 minus 4 is 5. The decimal comes down. I cannot do 4 minus 7, so I'm going to borrow again. 14 minus 7 is 7, and 1 minus 1 is 0, so my answer is 7.531. So I've got 2 more examples here, very similar process. So I've got 356.18 minus 142.257. I've got my decimals lined up, and I've got my placeholder 0 that I need. I'm going to borrow from the 8 first. So 10 minus 7 is 3. 7 minus 5 is 2. I cannot do 1 minus 2, so I'm going to borrow. 11 minus 2 is 9. The decimal comes down. 5 minus 2 is 3. 5 minus 4 is 1. And 3 minus 1 is 2. So my answer is 213.923. Last one, very similar to part B. So I've got 34 with my decimal point at the end, minus 9.142. I've got my decimals lined up, and I'm going to have 3 placeholder zeros. This is just like part B, where I'm going to borrow all the way across. So 3, this becomes a 10, borrow becomes a 9, becomes a 10, borrow becomes a 9, becomes a 10. So 10 minus 2 is 8, 9 minus 4 is 5, and 9 minus 1 is 8. Bring down my decimal. I have to borrow one more time, so 13 minus 9 is 4. And 2 minus 0 is 0. So my answer is 24.858. So for addition and subtraction, we have to line up the decimals. Use zeros to fill those places where there are no digits. So those placeholder values where there are no digits. When you add, if you get a number bigger than 10, you have to carry over. If you're subtracting and the subtraction doesn't work, you have to borrow. Okay? In example 3, we're going to multiply multi-digit decimals. When you multiply, you do not have to line up the decimals. So when I set up my multiplication, I'm going to have 0.014 times 3.7. And I do not have to line up the decimals. I'm going to perform my multiplication like I would with any multi-digit numbers, and I'm going to worry about the decimals at the end. So 7 times 4 is 28, and I carry the 2. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 2 more is 9. 7 times 0 is 0. 7 times 0 is 0. Now I'm going to do the 3, but before I can do the 3, I have to move over one place value. So I'm going to put in a 0. 3 times 4 is 12, and I'm going to carry the 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. And then 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times 0 is 0. Now I'm going to add. 8 plus 0 is 8. 9 plus 2 is 11, carry the 1. 4 plus 0 plus 1 more is 5. 0 plus 0 is 0, and then my 0 in the front is going to stay a 0. Now I have to count the decimal places that I have. So I've got 1 right here, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to put my decimal in 4 decimal places from the end of the number. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And my decimal is going to go right here. So my answer is 0.0518. Okay, 0.0518. So we do not have to line up the decimal. And you are going to count up the decimal places at the end. So for part B, I'm going to do the same thing. So 0.067 times 1.42. 2 times 7 is 14. Carry the 1. 2 times 6 is 12, plus 1 more is 13. Carry the 1. 2 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1. And 2 times 0 is 0. I'm going to move over 1 place value. 4 times 7 is 28. Carry the 2. 4 times 6 is 24, 25, 26. Carry the 2. 4 times 0 is 0, plus 2. And then 4 times 0. Last one, I'm going to do 2 zeros over, so 2 places over. 1 times 7 is 7, 1 times 6 is 6, 1 times 0 is 0, and 1 times 0 again is 0. Now I'm adding all 3 rows together. So 4 plus 0 is 4. 3 plus 8 is 11, and I'm going to carry the 1. 7 plus 6 is 13, plus 1 is 14, plus 1 more is 15. Carry the 1. 6 plus 2 is 8, plus 1 more is 9. 0 plus 0 is 0, and then I have my 0 in the front. Now I'm going to count up all my decimal places. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to move in 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And my answer is 0.09514. Okay. Last one, 14.7 times 11.361. I am going to put the number with more decimal places on top. So 11.361 times 14.7. The order that you multiply in does not matter. So I want the one that has more digits on top. I'm allowed to do that. So 7 times 1 is 7. 7 times 6 is 42. Carry the 4. 7 times 3 is 21, plus 4 is 25. 7 times 1 is 7, plus 2 is 9. 7 times 1 is 7. I'm going to move over 1 place value. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 6 is 24, and I carry the 2. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 2 is 14, and I carry the 1. 4 times 1 is 4, plus 1 is 5, and 4 times 1 is 4. One more. I'm going to move over 2 places. One times 1 is 1, 1 times 6 is 6, 1 times 3 is 3, 1 times 1 is 1, and 1 times 1 is 1. And I'm going to add my 3 rows together. 7 plus 0 is 7. 2 plus 4 is 6. 5 plus 4 plus 1 is 10. Carry the 1. 9 plus 1 is 10. Plus 4 is 14. Plus 6 is 20. Carry the 2. 7 plus 2 is 9. Plus 5 is 14. Plus 3 is 17. Carry the 1. 4 plus 1 is 6. And then 1 plus 0 is 1. Once I've got all my addition done, I'm going to do my decimal places. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. So 1, 2, 3, 4 digits in. So 167.0067. With multiplication, you do not have to line up the decimal, and you may put the number with more digits on top if that's easier for you. Okay, multiplication can happen in any order. Last, we have the apply problem. This says the table shows the cost of produce per pound at a farmer's market. Mr. Gonzalez bought 0.75 pounds of pears, so I'm looking at pears, and 3.5 pounds of plums. So I'm looking at these two right here. If Mr. Gonzalez paid for his fruit with a $10 bill, how much change will he receive? So first I need to figure out the cost of the pears and the plums that I bought. So Mr. Gonzalez bought 0.75 pounds of pears, so 0.75 times 0.98. And he also bought 3.5 pounds of plums. So he spent $1.49 for each pound of plums, and he bought 3.5 of them. And again, I did this one this way because 149 has more digits. So I put the 149 on top. So now I'm going to multiply. This is the pears. This is the plums. So 8 times 5 is 40. Carry the 4. 8 times 7 is 56. Plus 4 is 60. 8 times 0 is 8. Plus 6 is 6. I'm going to move over 1 decimal place. 9 times 5 is 45. Carry the 4. That was silly. 9 times 7 is 63. Plus 4 is 67. And I'm going to carry the 6. So that's going to stay the same. And then 9 times 0 is 0. Plus 6 is 6. So when I add, 0 plus 0 is 0. 0 plus 5 is 5. 6 plus 7 is 13. Carry the 1. 6 plus 1 is 7. And then I've got 4 decimal places. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So the total cost of the pears is $0.735. Now I'm going to figure out the cost of the plums. So 5 times 9 is 45. Carry the 4. 5 times 4 is 20. Plus 4 is 24. Carry the 2. 5 times 1 is 5. Plus 2 is 7. I'm going to move 1 place over. 3 times 9 is 27. Carry the 2. 3 times 4 is 12. Plus 2 is 14. Carry the 1. And 3 times 1 is 3. Plus 1 is 4. So now I'm going to add. 5 plus 0 is 5. 4 plus 7 is 11. Carry the 1. 7 plus 4 is 11, plus 1 is 12, carry the 1, and 4 plus 1 is 5. This one only has 3 decimal places, so 1, 2, 3. It makes sense because the pairs cost more and they're buying more of them. So the total cost here is 5.215. Now I'm going to find the cost of the two of them together. So I'm going to do 5.215 plus 0.735. 5 plus 5 is 10. Carry the 1. 3 plus 1 is 4. Plus 1 more is 5. 2 plus 7 is 9. And 5 plus 0 is 5. So the total cost is $5.95. If he paid for if he paid with it with a $10 bill, paid for it with a $10 bill, we're going to do $10 minus $5.95. So I'm going to do 10, I don't need the dollar sign to do subtraction. $10 is 1000 minus $5.95. So I'm using those zeros as placeholders. So these two are my placeholder zeros. And we know that $10 is $10.00. So I have to borrow. So this becomes a 0. This becomes a 10 to become a 9. This becomes a 10 to become a 9. And this becomes a 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 9 is 0. And 9 minus 5 is 4. So he will receive $4.95. So here we had to use all of our skills for working with decimals. We had to do multiplication, then I had to do addition, then I had to do subtraction. So we used all 3 of our skills today on this same problem. So I had to figure out the total cost of each individual fruit. I had to find the total cost of them together. And then I had to subtract that total cost from the amount of money that I was using to figure out how much change I got. This is adding, subtracting, and multiplying multi-digit decimals. So for addition, line up the decimals, add straight down. For subtraction, line up the decimals and subtract. Make sure you use zeros for your placeholders in both of these situations. In example 3, you do not have to line up the decimal, and when you get to the end of your multiplication and you've added everything together, you're going to count up the number of decimal places that you have, and that's how far you're going to move the decimal. That's how far you're going to move the decimal in for your answer. And then for the apply problem, this one used all 3 operations in one problem. Tomorrow we will talk about how to divide with multi-digit decimals. So we'll add our 4th operation tomorrow.